Hi everyone, this is a Volvo, a broken Volvo as it goes. It's missing the turbo. I wanted to show you something and explain what happens to the turbo, what it looks like after it breaks, and how can you prevent it. Stick around and I'll explain. This is how a turbo of a Volvo of this vintage should look like. This is actually a bit younger than that Volvo, but this is the turbo. You've got the cold side, you can see the impeller, it's moving quite freely, there's no play in it, it's fine. This is a used part as well. I know what you're going to say, you shouldn't buy a used part for a car and replace it and all that, but I'm not going to spend £300 up just to see if the car works, because when I bought the car wasn't driving because of the turbo. And this is how the turbo that came off that car looks like. As you can tell, it's a bit battered. That, I would say, it shouldn't move as much. I think this turbo is a little bit broken. Again, this one, for comparison, there's no movement, it turns freely. Well, don't get me wrong, this one turns quite okay. It turns fine. There's a little bit of play though. Looking from this side, you can see this impeller. See? Moves freely, there's no play. This still moves, but there's quite a bit of play in it. It was actually rattling when I first heard the car. How do you prevent it? Change your oil regular. Whatever they say, don't change it every 2 years. If it's a diesel car, change your oil every 6,000 to 8,000 miles, which is about 10,000 kilometers. Just change it. It doesn't cost you that much. And it's not as involved of a job as replacing the turbo is. So just change the oil more regular and you should be fine. Or at least it should last you a lot longer than this. The other thing I wanted to mention is so-called diesel engine runaway.
Ele joga o motor o tempo todo.
It's basically when turbo spins out of control, the oil is leaking from the turbo and it's leaking into the intake, so the engine is starting to burn oil instead of fuel. Basically, on a manual car, you can choke the car by just putting a high gear and dropping a clutch. So the engine will just stop because of the force on it. If you put a high gear and release the clutch, you risk destroying the clutch. But then again, you're not going to destroy the car. In case of automatics though, it's not as easy. On all of the cars though, there's one easy thing that you can do, which is quite safe considering there's an engine that's going out of control right there and you're trying to do something here. Whatever engine it is, just know your engine. You need to block the intake, the air intake. You have to completely block it, starve the engine from oxygen. As long as you cut off the oxygen supply, if you put a rag over it or if you do anything, take a pipe off, because this is the pipe that goes into the inlet manifold. So as long as you manage to take this off quick enough or block it in any shape or form, that should starve the engine from oxygen and it will just stop running. Otherwise, it's going to run faster and faster to the point where it just blows up. Literally blows up. So it's not a fun situation to be in, and if you can't prevent it, just prevent it. The easiest way to prevent it is just to change your oil, because it will stop wear on the turbo to be too excessive. The other thing you should do when you've got a car with a turbo, let it warm up first thing in the morning. Don't start driving it hard, because that is the oil feed pipe and that needs to feed turbo with oil. Oil in the morning when you start the car up, it's quite thick, so it's not straight away ready to lubricate everything. So let your car warm up for about 30 seconds as soon as you start it. And even more important part, before you switch the ignition off, leave it run for about 20-30 seconds, up to a minute even. Because when you just finish the journey and the turbo is still hot, the only thing that keeps it alive and slightly bit cooler, a little bit cooler, is the oil. Oil cools it down as well and obviously lubricates it. So if you're going to knock the engine off straight away, then the turbo will stop, the oil will stop, and there's going to be quite a bit of oil inside the turbo. But because the turbo is very hot, it's going to bake that oil, it's going to cook that oil, and that oil is no good for anything, and that oil will be there to start lubricating the turbo next time you start the engine. So you're making that oil unsuitable. That oil goes back to your engine, so it's not good for your engine either, and that's over not waiting 30 seconds before you switch the car off. I don't think it's worth it. I always wait with a diesel, just wait for a little bit before you knock the engine off, and it will help the engine, it will help you in the long run, because you're not going to have the expense. Read about it, first of all, read about it, understand your car, because you can help it staying like that instead of ending up like this. Thanks for watching, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.